Good morning, everybody, and welcome to English with Jacky. I hope you're all well. Today, we're going to have a look at word classes. GCSE English revision, really important for the language question. And you often wonder, well, what is the significance in knowing what a noun is or a verb is? But believe me, when you have to write about it in question 2 on paper 1 and question 3 on paper 2, you need to be able to be identifying language word classes and talk about the effect that they have on the reader. So let's have a look. Let's think about why. Why are we developing language analysis skills? So as I've already mentioned, paper 1, question 2, paper 2, question 3 require you to be able to analyze language, take it apart and put it back together again in little bits. And you've got to be able to show clearly why words are used in certain ways to have an effect on you, the reader. If you don't know how to classify words, and many of you don't, then you can't begin to talk about them. So this is really important. It's important to develop an understanding of some basic terminology about word classes. So let's have a think about nouns. You can look around you and you can see things. You can label them. They're objects. How can we test if a word is actually a noun? And often you can is if you put something called a determiner in front of it. So that's a, an, the. So if we have a look at the picture to the right-hand side of the screen, have a look at it. How many common nouns can you actually label in the picture? Okay, so I'd just like you to just write down a few of those before I switch to the next screen. So you might want to pause me there while you write down your answers. And then when you've done that, let's just have a look at some of our answers. So the trees are in the distance there. The sand, a footprint or footprints. It doesn't matter if it's plural. We've got the sky, clouds or a cloud, the water. You could have had the sea, the horizon, all of those things, common nouns. And then we have proper nouns. They are words that refer to a person or a place, names of people. Here we have Paul, there's a Chantal there as well, or places like Paris, New York, America, or the place that you live in. They're called proper nouns. They normally have a capital letter. Abstract nouns. These are nouns that you can't touch. You can't hear, see, smell, or taste. So think of those senses. So you can't do any of those things, but they classify things. Feelings and emotions, for example. Things like sorrow, anxiety, fear, anger, love. All of those things are classified as abstract nouns. They also are a state of being, like peace, chaos, luxury, misery. Qualities like honesty, generosity, courage, determination, and moments in time. Think about birth, childhood, old age, and marriage. All of those things are nouns. You can't hear them or see them or smell them, but they're abstract nouns. So try and just do a little bit of work trying to learn some of those so that if you see them in the text, you can instantly talk about them if you wanted to, if they're interesting. Then collective nouns. Collective nouns are things that represent groups. So groups of animals or people or things. And I've just put a few of them down here for you, but there are hundreds of them. And it's well worth actually learning a few of them. So a flock of birds, for example, or a herd of goats, crowd of people, a litter of puppies, a class of students, a galaxy of stars. So all of those things classify what type of collective noun these things are. So that's nouns. Now we can think about maybe adjectives. These are the words that describe a noun, and their job is to sharpen a mental image for the reader. So really think about that. So what's sharpening your image? What's helping you to know more about that noun? So if we look at the two pictures of the beach, totally different. Think about how the adjectives change the mental image and create or capture an atmosphere. So if we look at the first collection of words, we've got things like lonely, calm, quiet, peaceful, and still. So we can really feel that that is creating for us in our mind's eye a kind of mental picture of a very calm water and maybe an empty beach. Whereas in the other picture, we've got words like crowded, busy, noisy, hectic, scorching. And you can see there are lots and lots of people on a beach and in the water. A totally different type of atmosphere might be going on in that picture. So it's really important that a writer will use adjectives to actually make the reader be able to see what it is they really want them to see. If we move on and we have a look at the other kind of word classes that we need to know for our language analysis, and those are verbs, are action words. And these you can think about as the driving force of every sentence. So verbs show action and they show movement. They also determine when something is happening. For example, past, present, or future. Now here we have the present continuous. Tense going on in my collection: running, climbing, swimming, cycling. It's happening now. But if I did it every day, I could put I run, I climb. It's something that I do often, but I'm not doing it right now. And of course, if I change that to the past, I ran, or I went climbing, or I swam, or I cycled. We just change the ending, or we change the word to show that it happened in the past. And that might be important for you to pick up on when you're having a look at your little extracts in a GCSE exam. So the words then that actually help us to find out about the different type of effect that's going on is that verb that's used. So let's have a look at these two examples. Sally shut the door. Sally slammed the door. What can you determine about how Sally is feeling by analysing the verb in each sentence? Which one suggests anger or tension? And obviously, you've all said, I hope, that it is she slammed the door. Again, we've got another one. Alice sniggered when she saw Holly's dress. Alice chuckled when she saw Holly's dress. Both verbs in these sentences suggest a way of laughing at a person. However, think about connotations. So what connotations do each of the words sort of suggest to you about the specific way Alice is reacting when she spots Holly? So which word would you say is slightly more mocking? And I think you would have probably said sniggered. So they're both a way of maybe being a little bit unkind. So this is the sort of thing that we need to be thinking about when we're reading and we're highlighting those nouns and verbs and adjectives which your teachers tell you to do. What have you got to do with them? We've got to talk about the effect that they have on the reader, the way that they change our understanding of a character or situation, maybe. Adverbs describe verbs, basically. They tell the reader how, when, or where something is done. So we would technically say they modify the verb. So things like quickly, loudly, accidentally. A lot of them end in ly, but not all of them. So I've got some examples for you here. We could say the dog growled menacingly. So think, as I read these sentences, what kind of effect or what kind of would you say about these? So how would you say that the dog is growling? He's not growling because he thinks somebody's at the door. Maybe somebody is at the door and he wants to attack them. So he's menacingly. She was woken by the sounds of the waves crashing over nearby rocks. So that tells us where something is done. So nearby. Suddenly, the bees swarmed around her head. And then we have wedged in the crevice of the rock. He found that he could barely move or breathe. It was a particularly hot day. So some days and every day might be hot in the summer, but it might be particularly hot on a particular day. and that might be important to notice. So it's really all about noticing the words in a sentence that give you more information, that have an effect on the way you understand how a character or something is happening. Okay, so when we evaluate words in GCSE English exams, because that's what basically we need to do, the question that you get on language, and don't forget both of your question fours, you can use language techniques the writers use and talk about the effect that they have. So the question will require you to think about the effect the writer's use of language has on you, the reader. So you will need to be able to identify the words technically, actually say the adverb. The writer uses a noun. The writer uses a collection of nouns or a collection of verbs or something, and be able to write about them in your analysis of language. So the question might say, how does the writer use words and phrases to show the effect of the weather in the following passage? So what you need to do there is you need to highlight the focus of the question, and you should have highlighted the effect of the weather. So that will be the thing that you're concentrating on when you read the extract. Read the extract and highlight any words or phrases you could use to answer the question. So we're just looking at word classes for now. Annotate those words by correctly identifying the word class they belong to, if you can, and decide what kind of effect they are having on you, the reader. So, do they sharpen your understanding about a character's situation? Do they sharpen the effect of an atmosphere being created or something like that? Right, so have a look at a couple of examples and have a go at writing an answer. I'm now going to read you an extract from a little short story that I wrote and see what you think. So you should have your highlighter pen in your hand so that you can highlight some of those nouns, adjectives, verbs, and adverbs. The storm rose suddenly. The wind came in ferocious gusts, icy and stinging as it whipped my hair across my face. The furious howling of it drowning all attempts to be heard by my companion. We were caught in a tempest that swept across the open moor, attacking the stone walls of the barn that we had just managed to reach in search of some kind of comfort and shelter. We didn't know when there would be an end to its persistent attack as we huddled together. It can't get much worse, can it? I shouted helplessly, my voice disappearing into the roar of the enemy outside. We're just going to have to sit it out, Jenny responded. We don't have any other choice. Okay, so on the next slide, I'm going to show you some of the words that I have highlighted, but I'd like you to have highlighted some of the words. And can you also annotate them? Can you identify what word classes they come from? Okay, so here I've got some. The nouns are in blue, adverbs in yellow, adjectives in green, and verbs in sort of purpley colour. And you can see that I have highlighted a few of those. Does that look similar to your efforts, or do I have more? Have you got more? Have you been able to identify which ones they are? It is often helpful if you have a few colours with your highlighter pens so that you don't have to keep on writing on your sheet. Okay, so what would I actually say? So you need to think about, and maybe sort of when you see them like that and they're sort of broken up into colours, you can see them as a collection and talk about them as a collection if they change atmosphere or they sharpen your image about something. So make your points relevant. All your points should include relevant examples, so that's your quotes from the text, and subject terminology, and comment on the effects of the words and phrases. So that is your job when you are answering the language question in the exam. So if you had chosen the verbs, let's have a look at some of those. The ones that I chose were whipped, howling, attacking, and roar. And I said that they were violent verbs to emphasize the savagery of the storm. So that might be my comment on the effect that they're having on me as a reader. Did you agree? I said that words that make the storm seem more alive by appealing to the reader's senses. So think about sensory language. We've got roar and howling, and I chose those to say that. I had some nouns. If I looked at the nouns, I had the nouns storm, and then later on it became a tempest, and then the enemy. And so we had some nouns there to emphasize how menacing the storm is becoming. And then my adjectives suggest the relentless power of the storm, things like ferocious, furious, persistent. And I've also added as it causes physical discomfort and pain to anything in its path. So it was stinging, it was icy. So those are the sort of things that you can do with word classes. So they really, really are important, and they're very helpful for you to know when you're answering the question. Otherwise, the examiner's not going to give you many points. We will have a look, obviously, at literary devices too, like personification, metaphor, simile, in another tutorial. But for now, I'd like you to make sure that you could pick up any book that you're reading, any little extract, and maybe take something which is a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs and see how you do. Pick out those nouns, verbs, adjectives, and then write down what effect do you think they are having on you as a reader. And you can send any of your work or examples of your work to your teachers, and we will be really happy to give you feedback. So thank you very much for joining me today. Have a good week, everyone. Bye-bye.